My name is Janelle Harper, and for most of my life people saw me as the strong one, the dependable one, the one holding everyone else together. I was the she'll handle it person, the call Janelle, she'll figure it out person, the prayer warrior, the encourager, the problem solver, but what they didn't know, what I never said out loud, was that sometimes the people who hold everyone else up have no one holding them. I didn't complain, I kept moving. That's what strong people do. Even when my days became overloaded, overwhelming, flooded with appointments, phone calls, late-night prayers for other people, counseling, errands, hospital visits, church committees, and "Can you help me?" messages at midnight, I just smiled, said, "Of course," and kept going. Because strong people don't get tired, right? Strong people don't break. Strong people don't admit when they need help. At least that's what I believed. It was a Tuesday morning. I remember because Tuesdays were the day I called my mother before work, as I got the kids ready for school. Except this Tuesday was different. That morning, I didn't even hear my alarm, or my phone, or the kids asking if breakfast was ready. I heard something else instead. Silence. I opened my eyes. Not to the sound of responsibility or urgency, but to the deafening realization that I felt nothing. Not tired, not rested, not peaceful, just empty. The day began like normal. Drop off the kids, stop by my mother's house, rush to the office, check in on 3 clients, return messages, send out ministry emails, prepare for church committee, help organize Wednesday night prayer group. Busy, full, demanding. But something inside of me felt different. Not broken, not sad, not even anxious. Just disconnected. I was physically there, emotionally gone, spiritually silent. I didn't tell anyone. Strong people don't do that. Instead, I buttoned my coat, grabbed my notebook, smiled at the mirror, the same smile I wore every day, and whispered 4 words. "Hold it together, Janelle." But this time, my reflection didn't smile back. That day I went to church earlier than usual. Not to pray, not to prepare, not to serve, just to sit. I sat in the very back row long before anyone else arrived. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, dust floated through beams of light like tiny whispers, and everywhere around me it felt like God was asking a question. Not, "Are you okay?" but, "Are you tired of pretending?" I sat there staring at the empty pulpit, the silent microphone, the unused prayer cards on the table, and for the first time, in a very, very long time, I didn't want to be strong anymore. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be held, not by responsibility, not by expectations, but by God. I leaned back, exhaled slowly, and looked around the empty sanctuary. And for the first time, speaking publicly to my own heart, I said out loud, "I'm tired, not broken, not angry, not losing faith, just tired." And right there, something led me to say something I had never said before. I whispered, "God, do you see me too?" Long pause. Silence. Then, for reasons I still don't understand, my phone vibrated. Not with the usual, "Can you pray for me?" Not with, "I need your help," not with, "Are you available?" but with a voice message from someone very unexpected, somebody who later would say words that would change everything. But that, my friend, is for later in the story. Let me pause right here, because I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Country, city, or even just the name of your church or home state? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel and how many lives God still speaks into. And while you're typing that, ask yourself this: have you ever been the strong one, quietly breaking? The next morning, I woke up before the alarm, not because I felt rested, but because I couldn't go back to sleep. My thoughts were loud, not panicked, not anxious, just crowded. Have you ever felt like your mind is full, but your heart is empty? I got dressed, made breakfast, helped the kids get ready, smiled when my mother called, returned a text that said, "Thank you for praying for me last night," logged into my first work call, prepared for the ladies' Bible study that I was leading that evening. From the outside, everything looked normal, But inside, something was quietly shutting down. The day continued. I met with a young woman who needed help budgeting for her small business. I gave advice, encouraged her, prayed with her. She said, "You always know what to say, Janelle." I smiled, but it didn't feel like a compliment anymore. It felt like a warning, because sometimes when people keep telling you that you're so strong, you start believing that you're not allowed to feel weak. That evening, I walked into Bible study. Women were laughing, smiling, hugging, catching up. Someone waved and said, "Here's our minister of strength, always encouraging, always smiling." Minister of strength, and it sounded beautiful, but it felt heavy. I opened the session with the usual warmth, but this time something strange happened. I was teaching from Matthew 11:28. "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." As I read it out loud, I paused. I had taught this verse dozens of times. I had quoted it to others. I had prayed it over people. But I had never truly claimed it for myself. All who are weary, not all who are capable, not all who are leaders, not all who are strong enough to keep going. Just weary. That word lingered. Weary. Not weak, not faithless, not broken, just weary. I continued speaking, but something felt different. The words were coming out of my mouth, but I wasn't sure I believed them anymore. God gives rest. Yes, but what if I don't know how to receive it? God restores the weary. Yes, but what if I don't look weary enough for anyone to see it? God comforts the brokenhearted. Yes, but what if I'm not broken? Just numb. After the session, a woman came to me, tears in her eyes. She said, "Thank you. That message saved my week." I hugged her, smiled softly, and said, "I'm so glad it helped." But as I walked away, I whispered to myself, "Then why didn't it help mine?" That night, when everyone was asleep, I sat alone on the edge of my bed. Not crying, not praying, not journaling, just sitting, not broken, not angry, not afraid, just tired. But this time it felt different. Like tired wasn't just an emotion, it was becoming an identity. And then, somewhere deep inside, a quiet thought whispered, "How long can you keep this up? Before your body tells the truth your mouth won't say." That was the beginning of the unraveling, the slow, quiet unraveling that no one saw coming, not even me. Have you ever looked fine on the outside, but felt something slipping on the inside? Let me know in the comments. I didn't collapse right away. I didn't crash. I didn't have a breakdown. It was quieter than that. It started with little things. Missing a turn while driving home, a route I had driven for years. Forgetting my wallet at the grocery store, staring at emails, but not having the energy to reply. Sitting in the car outside church for 10 minutes before walking in. Not because I was late, but because I couldn't find the energy to walk through the doors. Not weakness, not illness, just depletion. Like my heart was tired, like my mind was trying to keep going, but my spirit had stopped answering. One afternoon, during a client coaching session, I felt something I had never felt before. My mind went blank. My thoughts felt foggy. My energy disappeared. I could hear her speaking, but I couldn't process what she was saying. I nodded politely, but inside I panicked, not because I didn't understand her question, but because I realized I didn't care. Not about her, not about the work, not about anything. And that scared me, because that wasn't me. I loved this work. It wasn't just numbers, and it was purpose. But something in me, something deep, had gone silent. That night, I told myself it was just exhaustion, just stress, just hormones, just a long season. I said all the things strong people say when something is wrong, but they don't want to admit it. I just need rest. I just need a vacation. I just need to pray more. I'll be fine. Strong people love saying that. I'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. I was functioning. There's a difference. A few days later, I ran into an older woman at church, someone I deeply respected. She looked at me, really looked at me. She didn't ask, "How are you?" She didn't say, "You look tired." She just held my hand and asked one question. "Are you okay? Inside?" I opened my mouth to say, "Yes, I'm fine." But no words came out. My throat tightened. My eyes began to sting. That lump, you know that lump, sat in the center of my chest, and she whispered, "You don't have to be strong with me." That sentence was the invitation my heart had been waiting for. I didn't cry, not yet, but something cracked. Something finally cracked. That night something else happened. I sat in my car, outside my own house, for almost an hour. Not because I had errands to run, not because I was on the phone, not because I was praying. I was just sitting. Because I didn't have the energy to go inside and be needed again. That was the moment, the first moment. I admitted to myself, I think I'm tired of being needed. That confession broke me. Not in a dramatic emotional meltdown, no screaming, no tears, just a quiet, soft truth. I am not okay. Not I am weak. Not I have failed. Not I am faithless. Simply ... I am not okay. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix it. I wasn't trying to hide it. I was just admitting it. They say every breaking point has a trigger. Mine happened 5 days later. On a very ordinary morning, in a very ordinary parking lot, when I finally realized my body was about to tell the truth. I had refused to say out loud, but that's for part 4. Let me ask you something. Have you ever kept going? Not because you were strong, but because you didn't know how to stop? If you have, you're not alone. It didn't happen during a dramatic argument. It didn't happen in a hospital. It didn't come as some emotional breakdown where I collapsed to the floor in tears. It happened in a parking lot, a grocery store parking lot of all places. I remember sitting there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I had finished shopping. My car was full of groceries. People were walking past me, pushing carts, helping their children, checking their phones, living ordinary lives. And there I was, sitting in a perfectly normal moment, feeling something far from normal. I wasn't sad. There were no tears. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even stressed. I was simply blank, not peaceful, not rested, just empty, like the inside of me had gone silent. And then something strange happened. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel, and I didn't recognize them. They were mine. But they didn't feel like mine. They felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else, like even lifting them would take too much effort. I blinked slowly, hoping the feeling would pass, but it didn't, so I tried to take a deep breath. I inhaled, I exhaled, but it didn't loosen anything inside me. It felt like I was breathing, but not filling. And there was this small, quiet moment where something inside whispered, "You are functioning, but you're not living." I closed my eyes just for a second, but when I tried to open them, it felt like lifting weights. That's when I knew something was wrong. Not physically, not medically, but deeply. A quiet kind of wrongness, the kind that doesn't rush in yelling, the kind that slowly appears, sits beside you and silently says, "You cannot do this anymore." I didn't faint. I didn't pass out. But I could not drive home, because I could not move. My body had decided to speak, because I had ignored what my heart had been trying to say. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to keep being strong. And in that car, with nobody around to witness it, nobody around to rescue me, I finally heard the truth that my busy life had been drowning out. This is burnout, not laziness. Not weakness, not lack of faith. Burnout. I sat there, engine off, hands still on the wheel, while 1,000 thoughts moved through me. Not loudly, but slowly. Thoughts like, is this how it feels before everything breaks? Is this how God slows you down when you refuse to slow yourself? Did God sit me still because I never let myself stop? And then, without warning, I felt it. A tear. Just one. It didn't fall out of sadness. It fell out of relief. Because something in me was finally being honest. I wasn't fine. I wasn't just tired. I wasn't just busy. I was empty. The kind of empty that rest alone couldn't fix. The kind of empty that happens when you give and give, while quietly draining away. That moment in the car wasn't a breakdown. It was something more important. It was the beginning of a breakthrough, because it was the moment I stopped lying to myself. It was the moment I finally said the words that God had been patiently waiting to hear. I can't do this anymore. And strangely, saying those words didn't feel like defeat. It felt like surrender, but not to failure, not to exhaustion, to God. Because sometimes God will wait for us to stop performing strength, so He can finally become our strength. And that was the beginning, not of collapse, but of healing. We weren't there yet. Oh no, healing was still far away. I still had walls to face, fear to wrestle with, and truth to confront. But now, at least I wasn't pretending. And that, my friend, was the first step toward freedom. Have you ever reached a moment where your body said what your heart refused to admit? Comment below. You never know. Your honesty might give someone else permission to stop pretending too. I didn't tell anyone about that moment in the car. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family. I didn't even tell my mother, because strong people don't fall apart. At least that's what I told myself. But something changed after that day. It wasn't dramatic. No tears. Just a quiet shift. Like the ground beneath me had moved, and I could no longer walk the same way. I wasn't collapsing, but I wasn't standing the same anymore. The following Sunday, I went to church. Not to serve, not to lead, not to fix anything. I went because I needed something, though I couldn't explain what. It didn't feel like strength. It didn't feel like clarity. I just knew. Something in me had finally stopped pretending. I took a seat, not in the front, not near the people I usually sat with. I sat near the very back, close to the exit, just in case I needed to leave. I wasn't there to be seen. I wasn't there to be strong. I wasn't there to encourage anyone. I was just there. That felt like progress. Partway through worship, an older woman I barely knew, somebody I had seen but never really talked to, walked quietly down the aisle and gently sat beside me. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask questions. She just sat in silence. Then slowly, she reached over and held my hand. No words, no advice, no scriptures, just presence. And for some reason, that felt holy. A few minutes passed. She didn't move. She didn't ask. And then, still looking forward at the sanctuary, she simply said, "You don't look broken, but you do look empty. Sometimes, empty is where God begins." I froze, because that was the first time anyone had actually seen me, in months, not seen my strength, not seen my leadership, not seen my helpfulness. They saw my emptiness, and they didn't try to fix it. They didn't send a Bible verse, and they didn't say, "I'll pray for you." They didn't say, "Stay strong." They simply made room for it. It was the first time I realized something. People don't heal when they are told to be strong. They heal when they are allowed to be empty. She then said one more thing, softly, slowly. Helpers don't heal by helping more. They heal by letting someone hold them, even if it's just for a moment. That was the moment I finally understood. I was never strong because I never felt weak. I was strong because I never allowed myself to be held. That afternoon, I did something I never used to do. I drove home, turned off my phone. I didn't answer messages. I didn't offer help. I didn't serve. I didn't perform. I sat on my couch, and I let myself exist. Not as a mentor, not as a leader, not as the strong one, just as a person. And I whispered for the first time, "God, I don't need strength right now. I just need you." And in that stillness, not a loud moment, not a miracle, not a supernatural experience, just stillness. Something changed. Faith didn't shout, it didn't rush in with answers, but it made room. It made room for me. Have you ever realized you didn't need God to make you stronger? You just needed Him to finally hold you? Let me know in the comments. This is where the healing begins. After that Sunday, I didn't suddenly become healed. Nothing magical happened, no sudden breakthrough, no revival moment where my strength rushed back in. Instead, things got very quiet, very still, very honest. I woke up Monday morning, got dressed, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't planning. I wasn't preparing to help someone else. I was simply sitting. I opened my Bible, not to study, not to prepare, not to teach. I didn't take notes. I didn't highlight. I didn't try to understand. I just opened it, and I sat with it open, silent. I didn't read for wisdom. I read for presence. And that's when I realized, for years, I had been reading scripture like it was a manual, something to fix me, something to guide me, something to help me stay strong. But that Monday morning, I didn't need instructions. I didn't need answers. I just needed to know God was here. Not here to give me strength, just here. I turned to Psalm 34:18, a verse I had quoted for years. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. But this time I did something different. I didn't study it. I didn't analyze it. I didn't teach it. I simply let it sit in the room with me. I whispered, "If you are close to the brokenhearted, then I don't need to hide how broken I am." And that, right there, that moment was the beginning of healing. Not fixing, not strengthening. Healing. Over the next few days, I did something I never used to do. I rested without guilt. Not rest to recharge so I could get back to performing. Not rest because I had earned it. Just rest because I needed it. I didn't answer every call. I didn't reply to every message. I didn't rush to solve every problem. Someone texted, "Can we talk? I really need prayer." I looked at the message. I cared. I truly did. But I replied, "I'm not in a place to pour into anyone right now. But I'm praying quietly for you." I thought they'd be disappointed. Instead, they replied, "Thank you for being honest." I wish I knew how to say that too. That's when it hit me. Sometimes your honesty heals others, more than your strength ever could. Later that week, I had lunch with a friend. Not a ministry friend, just a regular friend who knew me as a person, not as a mentor, not as a leader, not as a helper. I didn't give wisdom, I didn't have advice, I didn't show strength, I just showed up, fully human, not impressive, not insightful, not strong. She looked at me and said, "I've never seen you like this. But I think this version of you might be the most real." There was no judgment in her voice, just truth, gentle truth. I smiled and said softly, "I'm learning how to heal." She nodded. "By being stronger?" I shook my head. "No. By letting myself be held." I want to say that after that, everything changed. But it didn't. Not yet. Healing wasn't dramatic. It wasn't instant. It was slow, gentle, barely noticeable at first. I still felt tired, but I wasn't pretending anymore. I still felt overwhelmed at times, but I wasn't hiding it. I still felt empty some days, but now I knew I wouldn't stay empty forever, because emptiness is not the end. It is simply the room God makes before He fills you again. So here's what I learned. Healing doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes healing looks like honesty. Healing doesn't always look loud and powerful. Sometimes healing looks like a quiet couch, an open Bible, a cup of tea, and no agenda. Healing doesn't always sound like worship and prayer. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Because silence is where pretending finally dies. And when pretending dies, healing begins. Let me ask you something. Have you ever thought healing meant being strong? Until God showed you that healing really begins, the moment you stop trying to be? I thought healing was rest. I thought healing was quiet mornings, tea by the window, an open Bible, and soft sunlight. But I didn't realize that real healing doesn't begin when you rest. It begins when truth finally confronts you. Not loudly, not forcefully, but gently, persistently, like a quiet knock on a door you keep choosing not to open. One morning, as I sat at that same kitchen table where I first felt peace return, something felt different. It didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt uncomfortable. I wasn't sad. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't overwhelmed. It was something different now. Clarity. Truth had come to sit with me, and it had come to tell me something I didn't want to hear. Truth said, "You don't rest, not because you can't, but because somewhere deep inside, you believe rest has to be earned." I froze, because that wasn't just an idea. It was a diagnosis. In that moment, I began to understand that I wasn't exhausted because life was busy. I was exhausted because I had built my entire identity on something fragile, usefulness. If I wasn't helping someone, I started to feel unimportant. If I wasn't showing up strong, I felt like I was failing. I wasn't burned out just because I was tired. I was burned out because I believed a lie. I am only valuable when I am useful. That lie shaped how I prayed, how I served, how I helped, and worst of all, it shaped how I believed God saw me. That day, I didn't just rest. I sat with the truth. I whispered, "God, I don't know how to rest because I don't know how to feel valuable unless I'm doing something." And for the first time, instead of answering with a verse, instead of reminding me of my strength, God spoke something else. Not loudly, not in a dramatic revelation, just quietly, with a voice I somehow knew had been there the whole time. "You were loved before you ever did anything." Then it came again. "You were chosen before you ever helped anyone." And then once more, "You were valuable before you were useful." The words didn't shout. They didn't crack open the sky. They didn't instantly lift everything off my shoulders. But they did something sacred. They told me that healing wasn't going to make me stronger. Healing was going to make me free. I learned something powerful that day. Truth isn't always comfortable, but truth is always kind. Healing isn't about returning to who you were before the exhaustion. Healing is about becoming someone who no longer believes lies about their worth. Healing requires asking hard questions, like, why do I feel guilty resting? Why do I apologize for saying no? Why do I think God loves my strength more than my honesty? The truth is, God was never waiting for me to be stronger. God had been waiting for me to be honest. And now I wasn't fully healed. But I wasn't pretending anymore either. This is where healing got harder. But it's also where it became holy. Healing didn't start when I rested. It didn't start when I slowed down. And it didn't even truly start when I admitted I was empty. Healing began the day I finally asked the one question I had been avoiding for years. Where did I learn that I had to be strong to be loved? That question didn't take me to a moment of trauma. It didn't take me to heartbreak or betrayal. It took me to childhood. Not a dramatic, painful childhood, just a quiet one. A childhood where I started helping early, where I was praised for being responsible, where adults smiled at me and said, "She's so mature for her age," where I learned, without anyone meaning to teach me, that being useful made me valuable, that being dependable made me worthy. And slowly, quietly, without even knowing it, I made a silent promise. As long as I am strong, I will be safe. Over time, that belief became a habit. People began to trust me. Friends began to come to me, teachers relied on me, church leaders leaned on me, my family said I was the solid one, and I believed them. It wasn't arrogance, it was survival. Because when people compliment your strength long enough, you start to fear your weakness. So I made sure I was always okay, always stable, always calm, always composed. And before I knew it, I stopped existing as a person who needed help and became a person who only gave it. I wasn't just avoiding weakness, I was terrified of it, because what if, when I finally needed someone, no one knew what to do with me? But now, years later, sitting at a kitchen table with my Bible open, I could finally see it clearly. God wasn't trying to show me how broken I was. He was showing me how tired I was from trying to never be broken. He wasn't trying to fix my burnout. He was trying to gently remove the lie that had shaped my entire identity. You are only valuable when you are strong. But the truth God had been patiently waiting for me to see, was this. Strength may get you applause, but it is honesty that brings you healing. You don't heal when you are strong. You heal when you are held. And that revelation led me to the hardest part of healing, the kind that feels more like surrender than recovery, the kind where you don't say, "God, make me strong again," but instead whisper, "God, teach me how to be loved when I am not strong." And for the first time, maybe ever, I believed he could. That is where healing truly began. She showed up to church on a quiet Wednesday evening, not for service, not for prayer, but for courage. She looked tired, smaller somehow, not physically, but inwardly. Her voice was slower, her smile faded, and her eyes were not the eyes of the confident, powerful sister I once knew. She stood in the lobby like a guest in a place that used to feel familiar. She was holding a small purse in one hand and a folded letter clutched tightly in the other. When she saw me, she didn't walk over fast. She didn't cry. She simply stood still, and after a long pause, whispered, "I didn't come to explain myself. I came because I didn't know where else to go." I didn't rush to hug her, not because I was angry, not because I was cold, but because I knew this moment was not about fixing what happened. It was about acknowledging that it did. We sat in the back hallway, on two folding chairs against a beige wall, where dozens of people had once walked by us praising her successes. But today, there were no admirers, no followers, no applause. She didn't have her polished words, she didn't have her strong presence. For the first time, she looked like my sister, my real sister. The one behind the speeches, behind the confidence, behind the ambition. The one who once wanted the same thing I had always wanted, to be seen without performing. She looked into my eyes and said softly, "I got everything I thought I wanted, and it cost me everything I actually needed." Then she paused and added, "You were right, but I didn't know how to say you were right without losing myself in the process." I nodded, not because I agreed with everything, but because I finally saw the truth. Sometimes the people who hurt us were never trying to destroy us. They were just trying to protect who they thought they had to be. I told her I forgave her, not because I was ready to rebuild everything, not because what happened didn't leave a mark, not because trust magically returned. I forgave her because holding on to what she broke would only break me further. I forgave her because God reminded me that forgiveness is about release, not return. It is about choosing freedom instead of bitterness. It is about saying, "You no longer owe me an apology to make me whole." She asked me, "Does this mean we go back to how things were?" I gently shook my head. "No," I said, "it means we go forward as who we are now." Because forgiveness doesn't erase wisdom. Grace doesn't ignore truth. Healing doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes healing simply means I can love you without needing to sit next to you. She nodded slowly. No tears, no dramatic ending, just understanding. She stood up, whispered, "Thank you," and walked away. Not out of my life, but out of the expectation that forgiveness meant we had to go back. I watched her leave, and for the first time in a long time my heart felt both light and whole. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was finally released. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel proud. I felt free. If this story spoke to your heart, I want to ask you something. Have you ever forgiven someone not to let them back in, but simply to let yourself breathe again? If so, you're not alone. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories of faith, healing, and hope. Like this video if it touched you, and share it with someone who may be holding on to pain they were never meant to carry. I'll see you in the next story.